far back last April, I had dropped that the Braves were going to get the 2025 All-Star game. And I have, one of my sources I have is at Learfield. And he knew for a fact it was coming. They had already been in discussion. MLB had already basically, and the Braves had already told them that it was happening. And so I dropped that last April. And then what was it, November? I think Major League Baseball, October, whatever it was, Major League Baseball said, yep, Atlanta's getting the 2025 All-Star game. So I've been doing this for a minute. To your point, kind of in our exchange, I don't consider myself an insider. Probably never will. It's just not. I just drop news that I happen to get.
Hey, your information is better than most like national mainstream insiders. It seems like your information comes out earlier. It's more accurate as opposed to like it being regurgitated. I feel like a lot of those folks are like kind of like speculating too, like just like you even see what they want to do with the Falcons draft pick at 7 overall. All of them are probably pegging Dallas Turner because everyone says that, he's a top edge rusher. But according to you, I saw a tweet where, he's not, I think he was like the 3rd ranked guy on the Falcons board.
Yeah. So as far as edge goes, he's not their number one. And so, for them, the Falcons apparently really, really do like Latu out of UCLA, which how can you watch this guy's like tape, game film, combine, like whatever measurable you want to go look at, how you can watch this guy and go, nope, that's not for us, is absolutely unbelievable. So he's number one, Dallas Turner. And look, I'm in the middle of SEC country, right? And so, down here, folks forget that Pac-12, well, they used to play football in the Pac-12, right? But, they forget that Pac-12 exists. They forget that the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the ACC exists, right? And there are a lot of really good players out of those conferences. And so, I understand the Dallas Turner thing being here in Atlanta, but I also know that the Falcons need immediate impact guys, and Dallas Turner to me is a project. You're hoping he turns into what you think he can be. Whereas to me, when you look at Latu, he's ready to come in now, which is what they need. And so, Dallas Turner is number 3 right now. They do have Jared Verse out of FSU as the edge at their number 2. Obviously, the draft day will kind of dictate how they go, but they really do like Latu as their first edge.
Yeah, and just to give our audience some background, Jeff, I know we were talking, but our guest today is Jeff Benedict. He used to be a radio host for 92.9 in Atlanta, which is I think a Falcons program too, where you guys talk about the Falcons in Atlanta or whatever. And recently Jeff has been dropping news on X, Twitter, whatever the heck you want to call it, and he's been ahead of the curve, and insiders are getting pissed at him. And it kind of lines up a lot with our site's philosophy, Jeff, because like we sort of like go against the mainstream as well. When everyone was touting Bryce Young as the first overall pick last year, we were kind of like slamming, we were like standing up on our desks saying like, how are you not looking at Stroud? How are you not considering Richardson here? So, I mean, we totally feel your pain on how the insiders can or even the mainstream can turn on you. So a lot of similarities.
Yeah, it definitely happened. I think last week I lost 600 followers just because one of the quote unquote Falcons reporters, who is in Indiana, by the way, had regurgitated the Monday morning quarterback thing about how the Falcons were going to be in on Christian Wilkins if they had landed Cousins. And my source, again, for 4 years has been 100% accurate with everything. It was like, we were never in on Christian Wilkins. We're going to a 3-4 defense. We don't need another. We're not going to pay $25 million a year to another nose tackle. We have 2 of them on the roster right now. It would never have made sense for us to make that move. And so I just simply responded with, hey, my source says that this is absolutely not true. Albert Breer is not telling the truth on this one. His inside source is not correct. And yeah, all of the Falcons reporters literally came at my head as if I was, as if I was coming at them. And I just simply said, hey, I tweeted this out yesterday. This is not true. And they took it personal. And I get it. My information, to your point, has been accurate. They're all using me as a source now, which is insane. There's a specific guy, and I won't name him, but he was in my DMs asking me questions. And so I was answering his question, no issue with the guy. But then literally an hour later, he'd come out and saying, sources said this. And I was like, bro, like,
come on. Yeah.
Doing? Like, it's crazy. Right.
That's the game. That's the game, Jeff. You're whether you like it or not. I know you don't want to call yourself an insider, but you're in the mix. You're good at what you're doing too. So like you're getting attention. And the thing is, all of these things can be bet on. So I feel like you're getting a lot more attention because there are probably people in Vegas, these betting syndicates that are probably scraping your tweets, seeing like, oh, look at Jeff with all the news coming in accurate before the media. And one of the things that one of the things we were talking about earlier is how Latu is like highly regarded amongst the Falcons. You could probably bet on Atlanta selecting him and get pretty good odds on that.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't even for me, just coming from a sports media background, right? Having spent such a long time in radio, in all aspects of it, producer, reporter, on-air host, all of those things. I don't really, and I taught it for a long time as well on the college level, right? And so I don't ever really think about the gambling aspect, but that's why the NFL is where it is, right? NFL, the whole fantasy aspect, the gambling aspect, they were really the first league to kind of embrace all of that. And so, that is an aspect that I obviously don't give thought of because I don't do a whole lot of it. I have a very addictive personality, so I try to stay away from things that I could be addicted to.
I'm with you, man. Well, I'll be remiss if I don't ask you this. I see your Clemson hat on too. Before we dive into Falcons news, I want to just get your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he was a consensus MVP favorite before the season started, or I guess an out of the box MVP pick by the mainstream, and now he's sort of falling off the radar. How do you feel about him?
Look, I think I would be disingenuous if I said I wasn't disappointed in how his career has kind of gone, right? Like we've seen the ebbs and flows of his early NFL career. Does he have all the tools to be a Peyton Manning and those? Absolutely, right? Like you can't look at him and say, no, this guy sucks, because he doesn't. Did I expect more success from him? I did. Is there still an opportunity? Of course, this is going to be year 4 or 5 for him. So, I mean, this isn't year 15, or year 10, 11, where we're going, where's this guy been? I think he came out the box, unfortunately, as the number 1 pick, and got put into a situation in Jacksonville where Urban Meyer just was an absolute train wreck. And I think anybody who pays attention to football on any level knew that was never going to work. Urban Meyer's ego is far too big to be successful in the NFL level, right? Because you look at the NFL coaches that are successful, they may have some sort of ego because that's just the nature of them, but they're not egocentric, right? And that's Urban Meyer's egocentric. So he came into a situation where it was not going to work out well. And then you saw him have success in that second year, getting a playoff win, looking terrible in that first half, but looking like the Trevor Lawrence we kind of expected in that second half win of that playoff game. And then last year, I just absolutely, I don't want to say upset. That's probably the wrong word. Disappointed, right? I'm not mad. I'm disappointed of how last year went for him, right? Because there was a lot of expectations, and he didn't hit the mark.
I mean, we were expecting him to take a big leap last year. And, to be honest with you, our site has kind of been against him from the start, not really considering him as what the top prospects that we've sort of ranked out coming out of college, Burrow, Stroud, these are the ones that we really honed in on. But for some reason, our site's founder, RC Fisher, who's a scout by trade, he's been doing it for 2 decades. He saw some of the flaws with Trevor coming out, but I'll tell you what, man, I think he has the tools to eventually get there, but I don't know that he's there today. And it's kind of disappointing just being a first overall pick, not being able to change a life in Jacksonville, especially in the division that he was playing in.
Yeah. I think, I may lose my Clemson diploma for saying this, right? But I think unfortunately playing at Clemson probably hurt his development. Brandon Streeter, who was his quarterback coach at the time, is no longer there, was really in charge of his development. I just don't think he did a great job. And, that's been echoed by a lot of different NFL type guys, right? A lot of former quarterbacks what's his name? That's now the head coach at UAB, Trent Dilfer, had said, I saw this kid. I coached him a little bit at the Elite 11, and what I saw then, he's regressed 4 years later coming out of Clemson, right? And so I think people kind of overlook that, but I don't know how you can't agree with that assessment. He did not develop the way that you would have liked to have seen when you compare him to like a Joe Burrow or CJ Stroud or some of those guys who developed in their time in college and really came out different on the other end than they went in, and where Trevor may not have regressed, but he didn't develop, right? And so when you can go into a college program as a quarterback and essentially stay the same for 3 years, that's a problem. And so I will say my Clemson Tigers are great at developing defensive linemen. You look across the league right now, arguably 3 of the top 11 or 12 defensive linemen are from Clemson, right? You look at Grady Jarrett, you look at Christian Wilkins, and you look at Sexy Dexter Lawrence up there with the Giants. 3 of the top 11, 12 defensive linemen in the league, and you can say we do that right, but quarterback, whether you're talking to Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence, I think both those guys, did themselves a disservice by coming to Clemson, and I'm grateful I got 2 national titles out of it, but from their personal development, I think we did both those guys a disservice.
We were talking about this earlier, right? You reported a lot of the signings and the moves that the Falcons made ahead of time, and one of the ones you even refuted was the interest in Christian Wilkins, which I didn't disclose this in the beginning, but I'm actually a Falcons fan myself. That's sort of like how I found out about you, even though I work for FF Metrics. And when I saw that Christian Wilkins article, I was like, hey, we have Onyemata. We had, we had Jarrett last year. Obviously, he got injured, and Calais Campbell's out there too. Why would we give that much money to Wilkins? So even though, even going back to last year, I think I saw a tweet where, like, the morning of the draft, you had a feeling, or you got a tip that we were gonna take Bijan at 8, right? So how do you handle the pushback from the media when you're coming in right? They're obviously not looking so great when you refute them. Like, how do you handle all that controversy going back and forth with them?
So even going back to last year, I had actually tweeted out 3 weeks before the draft that the Falcons had completely removed Jalen Carter off their draft board. Even if he was available, they were not touching him. And it really, I think the feeling here in Atlanta was that it had to do with what happened at UGA with the reckless driving and the death of the teammate. For them, that was a piece of it, but it was more so during his interviews at the combine. This dude talked about how he took plays off at UGA and didn't give 100%. And if you're the Falcons, you're trying to build a winning culture and you're trying to get back to a Super Bowl. How do you do that, right? And you can't do that with guys who are like, no, I'm going to change. I promise. I'm going to change. I'm going to be different. And so for them, it was just one of those things where they were like, nope, not doing it, not touching it. And so there was a little bit of pushback, especially since a lot of UGA fans follow me. Going back to your question about Bijan and all of that, there's a part of me that I think my wife would tell you I'm a right fighter. Like, I really want to fight to be right all the time, but you have to pick your battles. At this point, if you're not going to believe or trust what I put out there, it's fine. Like, I can't do anything about it. I've had to learn to mute my conversations as soon as I put things out, because I know some of them are going to be controversial. But ultimately for me, it's not me coming up with this information, right? Like, I'm not sitting at home going, how can I piss people off today? What can I put out there to get more followers, right? Like, I don't engagement farm. It's not something I'll ever do. So I don't get paid. I'm not on, I don't have the Twitter platinum or whatever it is. So I don't get paid for engagements. And so for me, I just put it out there. And if you don't like the information, cool. But I promise you, I'm going to bookmark it. I'm going to come back because I am petty. I am as petty as you can imagine. I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, I told you so. Usually in those words, or I'll put a laughing emoji. So yeah, it's just, you have to let it go. People are going to be upset that you're scooping them, especially when they get paid to do this.
Yeah.
Because I happen to know somebody who happens to have the information. Right. So, other than that, if you get mad, be better at your job, make better connections.
Hey man, I don't know what the work ethic is of those insiders, but like that's something where you constantly need to go find new sources, it's a lot of freaking work. And when they see you have a source like that, maybe they're comfortable in their position and they're not hustling the way they used to when they were younger trying to break in. So when they see you come in and refute stories accurately and bring in new information, that certainly would tick them off. But I wanted to ask you, even though you're not engagement farming, you are getting a lot of attention on X. You even mentioned that in one day you got 4,000 followers, which is nuts. Let me ask you this. What do you think your biggest scoop to date was? Or let's say the one that you were so most excited, oh, this is going to really, I know that's not your intention when you post, but you're like, oh, this is going to be good.
Oh, well, I think the latest one I had from this last week, only because now people are paying attention to what I have, right? I would go back and I would say equally, I would say the Kyle Pitts news, me letting people know, that London was going to be the pick a couple of years ago. Nobody had the Falcons taking him.
He was the first receiver off the board.
Yeah. Nobody had that. And I tweeted out the morning of the draft that was going to be their pick. And people were still, even local media, again, the Falcons flagship had somebody else, national had, I tweeted out that morning of the draft, this is going to be their pick. And again, I only had a couple hundred followers at the time. So people who followed me were like, oh, damn, we're not seeing that anywhere. So all of that said, I think the biggest one probably had to be what I said this week between, Justin Fields and Arthur Smith, right? And only because now I have, 4,000 people really isn't a lot if we're being honest, right? I don't know how Adam Schefter does this with 2 million, right? I couldn't imagine that nonsense. But only because of the follower count that I have now, it had to be the Justin Fields, Arthur Smith stuff.
And I DM'd you right after that saying it's hilarious that they're freaking in the same QB room. I mean, in the same offense now in Pittsburgh. So, but speaking of Arthur Smith, in your opinion, what went wrong in the Arthur Smith era? And if he didn't have a full-blown meltdown against the Saints, let's just say the last week of the season, they still lost. They played a close game, and he didn't, go after Dennis Allen, which, I get his side too, victory formation, and they're going for the touchdown. I get why he's frustrated, but you're representing the organization. That, if anything, the players should have been more pissed. If I'm the owner, I'm like, why aren't my players doing what you just did? You shouldn't be the one doing it. So what went wrong here? What went wrong with Arthur Smith?
Arthur Smith went wrong with Arthur Smith, right? I think his ego, we talked about egos, right? And you see a lot of first-time head coaches make this mistake. They want to be so perfect. Excuse me. They want to have so much success. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that job too, right? Typically you don't take over an organization because they're doing well, right? Very rarely do head coaches retire after winning a Super Bowl and you bring in a new coach and we're good to go. You saw that in Tampa, after their Super Bowl. But by and large, typically when you take over a franchise, you're taking it over because things did not go right with the former head coach in the locker room and things like that. And so I think Arthur Smith being so young pressed, and you could see the stress getting to him very, very early, right? Snapping at the media, snapping at the fans, people questioning, hey, why did you go out and take a guy like Pitts and a guy like Bijan and they're not playing? Right? Why is a guy like Pitts, who is a matchup problem on every spot on the field, why is he blocking? Why you have tight end number 2 throw to tight end number 3, right? Why are we doing this, right? And those were the things. And if you questioned him, he was acting like Bill Belichick without the 7 rings, right? You can't do that. You can't act like that when you've won 7 games each of your years in a spot. And so Arthur Smith to me was wrong with Arthur Smith, and Arthur Blank loved him. I think the front office liked him. I think the players were fine with him. The fans did not like him, and I think that was very relevant. I very rarely do Falcons fans agree on any one thing. They all agreed that they hated Arthur Smith, and so that's, and not that Arthur Blank gives a crap what fans think, but I think that meltdown was just the final straw. My source had said going into that last game, he was really torn. I mean, there was a part of him that wanted to keep Arthur Smith here and give him one more season. But then there's the other side of, is that season going to change? Is if we keep him here, are we going to change anything, right? And so I think that meltdown kind of tipped the scales, and so they made the change, and it's. I think it's going to work out for the better. I think they made the right decision, even though, and again, that was a scoop I put out this week too, where and it wasn't even new. Like I had tweeted this live about the coaching search. Like, again, this was 4 or 5 weeks old. I tweeted this as it went out and as it happened. And we can go into that later if you want to. But yeah, Arthur Smith's biggest issue was Arthur Smith. Everything with him. Wish him the best of luck up there in Pittsburgh, but yeah, thankfully it's not here in Atlanta.
So it's funny though that I think like there is a scenario where, let's say Atlanta made the playoffs, right? And they had the Bucs spot and they drew the Eagles, who were wounded at the time. There is a scenario where not only Atlanta wins that game, goes into the playoffs, right? Arthur Smith keeps his job. But what do you think happens this offseason, right? If Falcons have a playoff win, this is like Arthur Smith is finally putting everything together. He got a playoff win this year. Like, do you think they chase Kirk Cousins with Arthur Smith, or do you think he'd want to? Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't think they would have gone after Kirk Cousins at that point. I think they probably would have put all of that money into getting Daniel Hunter at that point.
Wow.
I think that completely. That was kind of the rock in the water with that ripple that kind of started everything else. And there was still a belief that they were going to get Daniel Hunter, right? But that whole Burns trade in new contract, Clutch Sports represents Hunter, and that whole Burns new contract trade the night before kind of threw a wrench in that. As the Falcons really thought they were still going to sign Daniel Hunter. And I kind of the week before all of that happened, I knew Daniel Hunter was going to be a big target for them. And I actually – and I was told not to say anything verbatim, but I went back on X and it's still up there. I put a GIF out there of the Looney Tunes Hunter, creeping through the woods, and just a very, very very simple GIF that people probably put no thought into. But I knew that Daniel Hunter was going to be a guy that they were at that point. They thought they were going to be able to get him. So. I think they probably end up with Daniel Hunter because they're able to give more money than the Texans did. And no, I don't think they go after Hunter. I think this would have been season 3 of Ritter and whatever else. Yeah,
that's crazy, man. The fact that like they could have rolled in with Desmond Ritter and Heineke again. Because look, I mean, I don't want to sit there and act like I'm a professional scout, like the owner of FF Metrics who does it for a living, crunches all that game tape. But those 4 games of Ritter in 2022, for someone like me that is relatively inexperienced in scouting people, like that was enough for me, man. Like he showed no juice. Like I was shocked that, we're going to give him a shot in 2023. And the fact that it could have even gone into 2024, that's mind blowing. And I was happy that Atlanta at least got something of value for him. Wow. I was shocked that Cardinals gave up more for him. It's crazy.
When the trade details came out and it was more than just a dozen hot Krispy Kremes, I was actually shocked. You get a guy who's I can't say he's never going to take another snap in the NFL, but he won't take another meaningful snap in the NFL. I think even if Kyler Murray gets hurt in Arizona, I still think they probably go out and try to make a trade for somebody else, right? Or they try to entice some retired quarterback like Matt Ryan to come back out for another season or so. I just don't know how you look at Desmond Ritter and say, and this is not a shot at Desmond Ritter, right? Like his fans or his family probably take it personal. It's not a shot at him, but not everybody's an NFL quarterback, right? Not everybody has the juice to be an NFL quarterback, and at this point, you've seen a dozen games from him, and I don't know that what have you seen from him in a dozen starts that you go, yep, that guy's got potential to be a really good starting NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, despite all of that, Atlanta was in a lot of games with terrible, terrible quarterback play. I think even if you put Matt Ryan today, I mean, last year behind that line with those offensive weapons, I think they would have made playoffs easily. Like there were one score games that they easily botched. That like I'm happy that sort of like the offense is ready to go, and that's what makes sense for Kirk Cousins. You know, bringing him on, he's probably going to make Drake London realize his potential. We're going to probably see Kyle Pitts finally be used the correct way, I hope, and not as like a blocking tight end. But remains to be seen.
If you're Zach Robinson and you're coming in, like, how do you not look at this offense and just like you're just salivating, right? Like you're just dripping, waiting to put packages out there for Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. Like you've got three of the best young playmakers in the NFL, all of them under the age of 25. Like, how are you not just salivating, ready for week one to kick off here and put your Ferrari to work? And so, I don't understand how you draft those guys if you're Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator, right? Like this dude did not come up on the defensive side of the ball. This was an offensive coordinator who resurrected Tannehill's career. That dude was dead on arrival when he got to Tennessee. The only thing people knew about him was he couldn't win games and his wife was hot. That's all anybody ever knew about Tannehill when he got to Tennessee. And then Arthur Smith gets promoted to the OC and resurrects his career. Derrick Henry goes for 2,000. Like, you're like, holy crap, that's our head coach. And then he comes here and he starts pulling fans out of the stands to say, hey, you come do this because, yes, I've got these three guys, but I'm not going to use them. I'm going to use Larry, who hasn't played football in 12 years, to go do this instead, right? And so, like, it just was not a good scenario. Probably too much too soon for a guy that really, again, was a coordinator for, 2 seasons before he got his head coaching gig. Probably needs a little bit more experience than that. And I'm sure he'll get another opportunity at some point. Hopefully he learns from his mistakes here and realizes that it's okay to delegate and let other people actually do a job that you hire them to do, and to use the talent that you've been able to draft. I mean, who around the NFL wouldn't want Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson as their 3 main playmakers on offense?
I mean, look, Zach Robinson, he's not an idiot. He's looking to get a head coaching job too, right? He sees this as opportunity. Look at Pitts, look at Bijan, look at London, like look at that offensive line. Like there's a lot to work with. We put a QB back there, and all of a sudden I'm going to get this offense that, at times stagnated last year, and it's going to be at the top of the league, and that's going to, boost his head coaching credentials. And you could see it around the league. Like the Carolina job, nobody wanted it. Like Slowick pulled his name out, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, everyone's pulling their name out. I'm actually shocked that Dave Canales, who I like a lot and did really good work with Baker, I'm actually surprised that he took the chance to go up into that hellhole with the Panthers, because he probably would have if he had one more successful season with Tampa, he could have, it would have been dealer's choice at that point.
Yeah, I mean, one more successful run with Tampa, and all of a sudden, jobs next year start opening up. Kansas City maybe opens up, and now you're a big name because you've won with Baker. Other jobs, potentially open up that you're like, oh, that would be. Yeah, the Carolina job is what the Saints job was 10 years ago. What it was 15 years ago before
Drew Brees.
Before Drew Brees, when everybody wore paper sacks to the games. The Carolina job. I mean, Tepper has just done a terrible job as an owner of that franchise. And, I feel bad for Bryce Young. I mean, I think he's talented, but that's a no-win situation there. You can't win when you have, a Canadian League offensive line and nobody around to help you out. And so I don't know that I would ever be desperate enough to take a job like that. But you look and you understand why Slowick and Johnson and those guys took their names out and said, no, we're good as coordinators, here with the Texans and with the Lions and, everywhere else that other guys have stayed and turned down that job.
Yeah. I think everyone's eyeing that Kansas City job. I don't know how many years Reed has left, but I mean, that one, will set you up and potentially put you down as one of the best coaches of all time if you don't screw things up, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, okay, the new regime, right? So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. You said in one of your tweets that Raheem Morris was Atlanta's fourth choice. Let me know if I misquoted you on that. Early on, which I think is crazy, and we'll get to it, Bill Belichick was reportedly the favorite, and Arthur Blank loved him. Was he one of the first offers we made, and who else did we offer it to?
So he did not get the offer. If he had gotten the offer, he would have been the head coach here in Atlanta. Going back through this entire process, and you can go back and check my timeline for all of this. Rich McKay and Bill Belichick, Rich McKay and Arthur Blank loved Bill Belichick. Both of them did. Both of them agreed on him. That was their number one.
That's shocking because a lot of the narrative is the fact that McKay hated Belichick.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Immediately after Raheem Morris was hired, what was the announcement from the Falcons? Rich McKay stepped away as president of football operations to go into Atlanta United.
Yeah.
Right? So Bill Belichick would have been able to step right in and kind of help take over those duties, right? And so, and I tweeted all of this out, and people were, even my own followers then, again, I only had 350 at the time, were questioning, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, but then you see what happens, and then ultimately, like, it made sense, right? So Bill Belichick was not offered the job, and the reason for that, because the other people that were part of this process, because it wasn't just Arthur Blank and Rich McKay, the other people that were part of this process begged and pleaded with Arthur Blank to not hire him, to go with somebody younger with more energy that would be a long-term solution to the Falcons, not a short-term Band-Aid, right? And so Blank apparently, again, according to my source, really struggled with that because they did like Bill Belichick and everything that he essentially would have brought to the Falcons, right? And so the three offers, and I actually tweeted this out, that Raheem Morris was essentially option 4 or 5 for them. And this was live. This was as the process was going on. This wasn't something new that I dropped this week. It was just basically things that I regurgitated as part of the Arthur Smith, Justin Fields conversation. Johnson and Slowick both got offers. Both of them said, no, thank you. We're staying in our respective spots. They were not interested in coming to Atlanta. They never offered the assistant. I forget his name now. The assistant with the Panthers got a second interview. He never got an offer.
Alagiro or whatever.
Yes. The third offer, which people don't understand or realize, went to Mike Vrabel.
Wow. He turned it down?
He turned it down. And the reason he turned it down was his offensive coordinator. He was telling teams his offensive coordinator was going to be Arthur Smith. And Atlanta was like, not going to work. Right? So that he turned it down because they basically told him you can't bring Arthur Smith back.
Jeff, there's a lot I'm processing here. So in a crazy
go ahead, good.
In a crazy alternate world, Mike Vrabel would be the head coach and Arthur Smith would be back as the OC. And Arthur Smith, was he on board with it? Like, hey, I'll get demoted?
I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is Mike Vrabel turned down the job. And my only assumption for that could be that the Falcons told him you couldn't bring Arthur Smith in as your offensive coordinator.
Oh my God, that is freaking. That's great, man. That's awesome. And I like Braves a lot, but I honestly like Ra too. I think Ra he gets a bad rap because he obviously had his first stint with Tampa where he was a young coach.
32.
Yeah,
32.
And I think what was it? Josh Freeman was the QB at that time. Yep. Like he didn't really get dealt a great hand with the organization, with the team, whatever, right? Then he goes to Washington, links up with Kyle, links up with what do you call it? Sean McVay, all those offensive mind. He's on the defensive side of the ball, but he starts working with them. And I even think he might have had an offensive post one of those seasons with the Redskins. He definitely worked. Coach. There you go. Like he has so much experience working with the top talent, and he's a defensive minded guy. So the one leg up is, yeah, he might not be a genius like Shanahan on offense, but he also has that defensive prowess. So like he is like a CEO in my eyes because he does a little bit of everything. And if he has the right coordinators in place, I think he could be really successful.
100%. Again, people want to use his head coaching, pass against him. He was 32, 33, 34 those years in Tampa. At 32, who the hell is ready to run an NFL team? I don't know any guys, and there have been many that have had the opportunity as young head coaches in the NFL. McVay's the only one that's had any sort of success. You look at the other guys who took over their early 30s, all of them were fired within 3 or 4 years, didn't have success. Lane Kiffin is another one that comes to mind, right? Early, success in college, takes over the Raiders and gets fired because he just was a complete idiot. And then, Raheem Morris takes over an 0-5 team here in Atlanta, goes 4-7 the rest of the way out. I mean, that's pretty damn good to me, especially the team that he had. So I think he gets a bad rap. I think he's won 2 Super Bowls, one as an offensive analyst, but one as a defensive coordinator, right? And so to me, you have a head coach who understands both sides of the ball, has coached on both sides of the ball, understands now in his mid-40s what his strengths and his weaknesses are, and is willing to hire. And I think he's gone out and hired guys who fill those gaps for him, right? And so I think he's the right guy. I think he's a home run hire, even if it is by complete accident. Sometimes those are the guys that work out best for you. I tweeted out on X during this was live that they really did like him. But he really was like kind of a fail-safe option because they knew he would take the job. And I think they're going to end up getting a slam dunk out of this by complete accident. Yeah,
that's insane to me, man. I can't believe that all 3 of those guys are off. I didn't think Raw was there for maybe like second to Belichick, but that's insane. That's awesome stuff, man. Listen, we're talking about Rich McKay and the crazy news that I'm still wrapping my head around that he actually supported Belichick. Because a lot of dude, if you go online, a lot of it is McKay and Belichick being pinned up against each other. But why? Like, the Falcons seem to be making a lot of good offseason moves. I've been following the team since the Vic era, and it seems like this season, especially, like, it seems like we're in harmony during free agent. We're like making a lot of good moves. Does this have anything to do with Rich McKay moving over to moving away from football operations?
I think it does. How many guys like Rich McKay can get fired as general manager and come back as president of football operations?
Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
He got fired as GM because he was terrible as the general manager, but was brought back and essentially promoted as football operations, president of football operations, right? It doesn't happen, and it did here. And so, I know a lot of people are coming at Terry Fontenot's throat because this is his 3rd season now as general manager. I guess 4th season as general manager. For me, this is year 1. This is going to be the first year where, to me, he's going to have complete control over what happens with this. And so, to me, it's no coincidence that we are seeing what we've seen so far this offseason. They didn't land Daniel Hunter, but they were in the mix, right? They did reach out for Hassan Riddick, right? Like, they're trying to make moves to get better. You went out and you got the best quarterback available. Miss me with the whole injury thing, his age. Like, this isn't 1990 anymore. Quarterbacks play well beyond the age of 36, and they play really well beyond that age, right? So you went out, you got the best quarterback available. You revamped your entire wide receiver room that you needed to do. You added a ton of talent there, which is what they were aiming to do. I think they have a really good idea of what they want to do in the draft, and they have scenarios A, B, C, D, E, and F. And I think no matter which way they go, you're going to see them end up with either edge rush number 1 or cornerback number 1, and hopefully some additional picks. It sucks that you're being thrown into this Kirk Cousins thing with the whole tampering issue. They're probably honestly going to get docked a pick or 2 because the NFL just doesn't care about why somebody was contacting somebody else. Context does not matter to Roger Goodell in the NFL. It never has, never will.
Let's go there, Jeff. Florio came after the Falcons hard, and I thought some of it was him being a little salty of the Vikings losing Cousins because he's a 100%. Vikings fan. But do you expect it to be a day 1 or day 2 pick that the Falcons get docked for the tampering issue?
I think they end up when you look across the board, it's not going to be a day one. Falcons are not going to lose a first round pick over this. This was not as egregious as the whole Miami, Tom Brady on a yacht thing. Kirk Cousins literally reached out to the trainer to set up his rehab schedule, right? Like that to me, what's the issue here? He's going, he has is it Achilles or ACL, whatever it was.
Achilles.
Yeah, he was setting up his rehab schedule with the Falcons training staff, right? So again, to me, context matters. It doesn't to the NFL. I would suspect that if they do lose picks, it'll be a third and a fifth or a third and a sixth in separate drafts, which sucks. I would prefer for them to kind of get to that now. That way the Falcons lose a third this year where they have the extra one instead of losing a third next year where they don't have that extra one.
Right.
And it would be the Falcons pick. It would not be the pick that they got for
Jacksonville.
Yeah. They would lose their own pick. They wouldn't lose the pick that they traded for, unfortunately. But yeah, I would be shocked if it was a round one or round two, because it's just not, to me, the whole thing is not egregious. It's not illegal for players to talk. It's not illegal for players to recruit. Mike Florio to me is just a drama queen, who just like he engagement forms on everything, right? Like it's all about engagement to him. And he wants to be as dramatic as possible because we love dramatic, right? Whether you're an NFL fan or not, we love drama, which is why the Real Housewives of whatever has been on the air for 20 years now, because we love drama. And so Mike Florio knows that. He knows the algorithm. He knows how to get clicks. And so I really, honestly, I don't read him. I try not to pay attention to anything he says because to me, it's all dramatized. Ultimately, it was Kirk Cousins reaching out to the training staff a day early because he is going through such a major recovery right now as he tries to get ready for his, 14th or 15th NFL season.
Insane. Yeah, I'm totally on the same page as you with Florio, but I want you to be the GM here, Jeff. If you have the 8th overall pick, say you can't trade it, who's your guy? Who are you taking off the board?
Oh, I'm taking Latu out of UCLA. If I can't trade that pick, I'm taking Latu. The only exception to that is if Drake May falls to 8, I'm taking Drake May, and he's going to sit behind Kirk Cousins for 2 years and learn.
So is Drake? I wanted to ask you this too. Just looking at the QB class, yep. Drake May's your guy.
He has been my number one in this class since he was a freshman at UNC.
What I was going to say is the big thing around him is he had a great 2022, and a lot of people are throwing shade at his last season. But despite all that, you think he's the number one guy this year?
I think when you're talking quarterbacks, right? People, NFL people and scouts and everybody else loves to claim, that game film doesn't really matter a whole lot to them, right? As far as, not game film, but as far as like statistics don't matter, right? And so if that's the case, if you're looking at just traits and you're looking at leadership traits, you're looking at mechanical traits, you're looking at all of those things, to me, Drake May is the number one quarterback. I really do question. I don't care about the nail polish. I don't care about the pink phones. I don't care about I question whether Caleb Williams can lead men, right? And ultimately, that's what you look for in your quarterback. Your quarterback can't be a beta. Your quarterback has to be an alpha. And I question whether a guy, because it's now come out in the last couple of weeks. And again, I don't care skipping things in the combine. I don't care he didn't throw. I don't care he didn't give his medicals. Like, that doesn't bother me. The fact that it has now come out that at USC, the only person he would talk to was Riley, that's a problem for me. When you won't talk to your quarterback coach, when you won't address your offensive coordinator, when you don't talk to your teammates, that's a problem for me. Because you do that in the NFL, those guys are going to stuff you in the garbage can and throw you out and not bring you back. And so that, for me, like, that's a major red flag. Again, I don't care about anything else. Your quarterback has to be an alpha. If your quarterback is not an alpha, is not a leader, you will go nowhere as a franchise. And you look at kind of like those BC level guys that have won. You look at the Trent Dilfers, the Brad Johnsons who have won titles as quarterbacks. They may not have been the main alpha, but they were still alphas, right? Like Ray Lewis on those teams was the main alpha. Warren Sapp was the alpha. But Brad Johnson was still an alpha. Trent Dilfer is still an alpha. I question whether and this may be, too misogynistic for some people, which is fine. But you have your quarterback has to be a leader. They have to be somebody that when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter and overtime against the 49ers, you look at that quarterback, you know he's going to lead you to a title like Patrick Mahomes did 2.5 months ago.
Exactly. I don't think that's misogynistic at all, man. Like, the QB is the commander in chief. Like, he has to, hold people accountable, this, that, and the third. Like, that to me is the desirable qualities of a quarterback. And being in LA, watching SC, seeing Caleb Williams, I agree with you, man. I don't think that this is a surefire number one pick. And a lot of people, they've been ranking the top draft prospects, I think, of the past decade, and they have Williams and Trevor up there in the top 5. I'm like, Williams isn't. I mean, I have my qualms with Trevor. I don't want to go there, but Williams doesn't even belong in this it's just crazy how much hype's around him being the Trojans quarterback.
Yeah, I said to somebody the other day, because I've gotten a lot of flack, because for me, if I'm drafting a quarterback, my philosophy is probably very different from everybody else. I will never, if I was an NFL GM, and I've said many times, I'd be a terrible GM. But if I'm the general manager of an NFL team, I will never take a quarterback before the end of the third round. Because for me, I don't care how talented somebody is. One, quarterback is the biggest bust position of all time. How many misses do we see repeatedly year after year after class, right? We miss and misdiagnose quarterbacks time and time and time again. I mean, even going back to Patrick Mahomes' class, Trubisky was the number one pick. Deshaun Watson, again, my guy, again, I wouldn't touch those guys in the first round. Patrick Mahomes, cool, worked out, 10th or 11th overall, obviously hit a home run. But for me, the reason you see Mahomes' success was, one, the franchise he went to. One of the greatest coaches, and say what you want, Reid has been one of the greatest coaches of NFL history before he won these Super Bowls with Kansas City, right? But number two, Mahomes was the final piece of the puzzle that Kansas City needed in order to go win Super Bowls. They had everything else they needed, and they needed a quarterback, and they went out and got him at that point. So for me, I would draft everywhere else but a quarterback, whereas we see teams who repeatedly pick in the top 15 every year, they go after these, the Bears. They're chasing another quarterback again 4 years later. The Jets are going to be chasing the quarterback again. These teams chase quarterbacks because they don't know how to evaluate them, and they don't fill the other positions that are a lot more important to me than a quarterback. If you don't have a blindside tackle, why do you have a quarterback? If you don't have playmakers, why do you have a quarterback? Right? If you don't have a guy who can go stack the quarterback, why are we drafting the quarterback? And so
say what you want about what Atlanta did. At least they made the engine ready to go, right? Throw a quarterback in there, and now all of a sudden they're dangerous.
Yes, exactly. It may not have gone the right way, and they may have picked the wrong quarterback, essentially. But I do like the fact that the last couple of years they have addressed other needs, and they're hoping that Cousins can be the final piece to get them, at least get them into the playoffs, maybe get them a playoff win, and then you kind of go from there, right? Because it's baby steps. You don't go from 7 wins to Super Bowl champs in a year. It just doesn't happen. You look at the Bucks. The Bucks won their title a couple years ago because they had everything, they addressed everything else, and then went out and were able to say, hey, Tom, we got everything else for you, Tom. Come back and join us.
Yep. And look how that worked out for them. The engine was ready to go, and you just put the driver there, and they got a ring out of it. But let me, you talked about May potentially falling. Yeah, he's probably going to go second overall or top 3. But, I mean, one of the top 4 will fall. I want to get your thoughts on this. If one of those top 4 guys are available, and this is consensus 4, not mine, Caleb, May, Daniels, JJ, if any of them are at 8, is there any scenario where the Falcons draft them, or is that pick getting traded?
Nope. The only quarterback the Falcons will take at 8 is Drake May.
Wow. Okay.
That's the only and there is talk in the franchise, and I actually put this out a couple of weeks ago. There's belief in the franchise that there's a real possibility that Drake May falls to them at 8. If he does, he will be the pick.
Wow, that's shocking, man, because no one really has Atlanta taking a kid. The whole time, you know what I'm thinking in my head? When we signed Cousins, I'm like, this is eerily similar to when Kansas City had Smith, drafted Mahomes, right? An older veteran, groomed the guy. Let's put someone, let's not throw someone in the fire. So I could see them doing it too. If May's their guy of the future, I could see that. But what about in the second round? Do you think PENIX or Knicks or someone like that could potentially be on the table, or they're not into them?
So I would be the other quarterback that I know for a fact that they really like is Spencer Rattler, and they expect him to be available in the third or fourth round. They will not. They absolutely will not drop PENIX in the second round. They will not. Bo Nix, nope. I mean, I just, from a personal standpoint, I don't know how you watch those guys and say that's our quarterback of the future. I can't tell you the Falcons feel that way, but I can't tell you that they will not. Other than Drake May falling to the eight, there's no plans for them to drop the quarterback in the first 2 or 3 rounds.
So what makes them think that May's going to be there at 8? Who of the top 3? Who's going to go? They think it's going to be Williams, Daniels, JJ, and then all of a sudden May free falls. Wow.
Potentially. And I mean, every year, and I kind of put this question out just to see, like, the other day, every year we see somebody fall. I mean, last year, Will Levis was supposed to be the top 5 pick, ends up going, number 1 in the second round, right? Like, every year somebody falls. Not to say that Drake May will fall, but every year there's a guy that gets invited to New York. Maybe they turn it down for whatever reason, but it just seems like every year there's a guy who's supposed to go in that first round who ends up falling to that top of that second round. And there is belief that potentially, and again, I don't want to seem like I'm wishy-washy here, but I put this out almost a month ago that the Falcons do believe that there's a real chance that Drake May falls to them at 8, and if he is available at 8, they will take him at 8.
Amazing. I love that. And I mean, look, all of these QBs, like you said, time and time again, this is a gamble, man. You do not know how these guys are going to translate till they hit the field. Stroud, for all he did, right? I loved him coming out, but I would have never predicted him or projected him to be this good until I saw him on the NFL field and do it, right? Like, you can say what you want about them until they hit the field. It's kind of hard to tell. With PENIX, he had moments in that game against Texas. He looked okay, but here's the thing. Back-to-back weeks, he goes up against legit defenses, and in that second game, right, in the national championship, he couldn't hold up. He got injured. And in the NFL, it's not back-to-back weeks against NFL defenses. It's 17 weeks, man. So how is your body going to hold up if you can't freaking handle weeks against Utah, Nevada, whatever, the Pac-12 teams? How are you going to freaking go in to, I don't know, say he goes to the Raiders. You're going to go up against the Kansas City D-line. You're going to go up against Bosa and Mack. How is he going to hold up against those guys?
And for me with PENIX, one, obviously he's older, right? A true 6-year guy. He'll be 24, I think May 8th, second week of May. So he'll already be 24. And here in Atlanta, just kind of sprouting off that before I get back to my point, people here are starting to make an issue with Latu's medical history, right? Because he medically retired before getting to UCLA, when the actual story is that the surgeon who did his neck surgery cleared him to play. Another specialist cleared him to play. Washington would not clear him to play and said, sorry, you have to medically retire. So he did. Well, he went back to these same specialists, and these same specialists said, no, you are good to go play football. UCLA specialist cleared him, so he went to UCLA. He's never had another issue whatsoever. And people here were like, that's why you don't draft him, because he has medical issues. No, he doesn't. He had a neck surgery 4 years ago and has been cleared to play and has absolutely dominated NFL caliber offensive linemen every single week in the Pac-12. I say that to say this. Michael Penix Jr. has far worse medical issues than anybody else in this draft. At 24 years old, he has already had 3 major surgeries. 3. And you're going to go draft him in the first or second round? to your point, what is going to happen to this dude when Joey or Nick Bosa get a hold of him? What's going to happen to him when he goes and plays Dallas and Micah Parsons absolutely ends his career? There goes your first or second round pick because you had to go get a guy who ran a 4.46 or a 4.64 the other day against air. When you want to take him the 4th, 5th, 6th round, cool. But to me, that dude's medical issues and his injury history, far too much for me to spend a 1, 2, or 3 pick on him.
So I saw one of your tweets where you think, by and large, and please correct me if I misquoted you, Carson Beck is the number 1 guy coming out of next year's class. Would you take, if you had dealer's choice of anybody this year or Carson Beck, do you take Carson Beck?
Oh, that is such a good question. For me, I still take Drake May, but Carson Beck to me is number 2, and he's number 2 in this year's draft. I think he is number 3 if you include last year's draft because CJ Stroud. You can't argue with what he's done, right?
Yeah.
He may be the red herring. He may be the exception to the rule. But to me, Carson Beck, because he's such a nerd, right? And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but when you look at Carson Beck, when he doesn't have his helmet on, he just looks like a nerd, right? And people they want their quarterbacks they want them to be, expressive and, demonstrative and all of those great big words that you use for the SAT. Carson Beck he's the alpha leader, but he's just a quiet dude. He's just very unassuming. But when you watch him throw the ball, when you watch him lead that Georgia offense, and I'm not a UGA guy, by the way, right? Like I bleed orange.
Yeah.
And we played Georgia to start the year. Having to play Georgia and Mercedes-Benz to start the year, I don't want to go face that dude because I know how good he is. If he was at USC, they probably win a national title last year. Like I just think he's that damn good.
Okay, USC has a lot of issues, man. I don't think a QB, if you put Peyton Manning from the Knoxville days back there, I don't think that's going to help him out, dude.
That's okay. Peyton didn't win a national title at UT anyway.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Remember, T. Martin
did it.
Won a national title.
Yeah, that's right.
I just think Carson Beck to me makes every team that much better. And if he was playing anywhere else but Georgia, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt at Georgia, right? Because they are so stacked everywhere that he does not get the respect that he deserves. If he was anywhere else, he would have been in New York last year.
And let me tell you this, like the fact that like Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, you're seeing all of these QBs from these schools that are really good starting to kind of, I don't want to say Tua flop, but he's not where he probably should be or where he was projected to be. So I think that hurts someone like Carson Beck.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely 100%. I just, that dude's got, he's got the prototypical size at 6'5". He's got the arm. He's got he knows how to read defenses. To me, he is so far ahead that I just, he's QB1 next year. I don't care about what Ayers in Texas and all of the other guys. To me, I'll take Carson Beck over all of them. In the last 3 drafts, he's quarterback number 3. Excuse me, good Lord, he's quarterback number 3, behind Stroud May. But next year's quarterback class is probably better than this one.
Wow.
When you look top to bottom in college, to me, Carson Beck is number 1.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. I'm excited for that too. Before we move to subscriber questions, Jeff, I want to get you out of here too. We're getting close to an hour. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but talk to me about the wide receiver draft class. It looks like this is going to be a pretty strong class. Obviously there's the Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors that are going to go in the top 10. But honestly, when you start looking at like second round guys, Ladd McConkey, you have Luke McCaffrey from Rice. Like there's a lot of exciting talent this year. Are you getting similar thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when you look at this draft class, to your point, the Odunzes and the Neighbors and those guys, where they're going, right? And then you start, you kind of go outside that. You start looking at the second round with guys like Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey's a big again, not a UGA guy. Ladd McConkey might be the most complete wide receiver in this draft. When you look at the ability to play all the different positions, most people have him as that X slot guy. Probably the best route runner, probably the best hands in this draft. I think his speed, people were shocked by his speed. Again, another guy who has amazing size for what he's about to play. Plus, he's just a really good dude, right? And so I think all of those things matter. But that's another guy who people are thinking could sneak in late first round. He'll be a second round guy. Troy Franklin out of Oregon. You look at Roman Wilson up there in Michigan. Jermaine Burton, another former UGA guy who's at Alabama. He'll be a second, third round pick. A lot of people in my message about Ricky Purcell there out of Florida. Again, another second, third round guy. All of those guys are really, really good. And that doesn't even get into all of the guys out of FSU, right? I mean, FSU had
Keon Coleman,
right? Like that's a big one. He'll be available there in the second, probably third round, to be honest. Johnny Wilson is a guy who probably would be available in the fourth or fifth round. 6'7". He can, when he wants to play, he's really good.
Yeah.
He's not a guy who takes a lot of plays off, though, right? Doesn't understand how to utilize his size yet. It's 6'6", 6'7". Jalen McMillan, another Washington guy, right? Jamari Thrash out of Louisville. Thrash is a guy who, he's 6 foot tall, like 170 pounds. Dude's a playmaker, though, right? Get him into open space. Another guy that'll be really good in that third or fourth round. So, Javon Baker, a guy out of Central Florida who's getting a lot of love. So I think when you look at this draft, I think if you look at receivers that will go in rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6, probably would have gone in 1, 2, 3, 4 in other years because of how this draft is just insanely deep at wide receiver.
It's crazy. And the fact that, you look at Arizona at 4 and that they're going to take Marvin, but they could get so much more depth and talent later, right? It makes you wonder, do you take someone like Harrison that early? We'll find out. Personally, my favorite in this class, I don't know if he's going to hit or not, but it's the other LSU receiver, I believe, Brian Thomas Jr. He for some reason, he just reminds me of Julio Jones. He's big, he's fast, athletic. Julio was a little raw coming out too out of college. So I'm excited to see where he lands. But to me, it's all about landing spot, right? Ladd McConkey, projected to be at the end of the first, beginning of the second. Who's picking there? Kansas City? Could you imagine McConkey with Mahomes? That'll be nuts.
Yeah, I mean, he would give them what they didn't have this year. He would give them a great possession receiver. They had what's his name that they ended up essentially benching for the entire playoff run. I can't remember his name.
Kadarius Toney?
Yes.
Or Sky Moore?
Pick. Kadarius Toney, right? Like a guy who led the NFL in drops and then wondered why, Kansas City was like, nope, he's injured, we're good. Yeah. McConkey is not that dude. I mean, he is what Clemson fans wanted Hunter Renfrow to be, right? Renfrow had that one really good year in Oakland and just kind of fallen off for whatever reason. I think McConkey, and of course it's easy to make that because they're both white wide receivers. They're both walk-ons. I get it. But McConkey, to me, just if he's available in that second round and you're looking for a wide receiver, I don't know how you don't take him. The entire thing, this entire draft is absolutely insane when it comes to wide receivers.
I hope that we have McConkey on our radar. I don't know that he'll fall to the second round where we're picking, but it's possible. I mean, he's there, and we already got Moore and Mooney, so I don't know how much they want to invest in that position. But let's move to, Jeff. Let's get you out of here. Let's move to the subscriber questions.
Yeah.
Really quickly, we got a couple of them. These can be quick hitters. Tyler Algier, where do you think his role on the team lands next year? Do you think it's more going to be I think last year it was closer to 60-40 Bijan. Do you think that moves more towards 75-25?
Yeah, I would say probably 75-25, 80-20. I think we're going to see a lot more Bijan. But I like to me, it's almost thunder and lightning, right? Tyler Algier is such a great change of pace running back when you compare him to Bijan. And I love what he brings. To me, Zach Robinson's got to have packages that feature both of them. Just because both of those guys are such matchup issues. you would be remiss not to have them on the field at the same time at certain points in certain, in certain positions on the field. So I think he's still going to be a part of this offense. You're not going to forget about him. Definitely not like Arthur Smith did Cordell Patterson this year. You'll see Algier a lot. And I think he'll play a bigger role in the passing game as well.
If Turner goes 7, there was a lot of, I think one of your tweets was they want to trade, if the top 3 defenders they have on their board are available, ideally Atlanta wants to trade back. But if Turner goes 7 overall, which is, I can't imagine that happening with the Titans needing O-line, but crazier things have happened. Do they take Latu right there at 8?
Yeah. So if any one of those 3 defensive, those edge guys are off the board by the time they get to 8, they're not going to trade back. They will take whichever one is available. If Latu's gone early, then they will take Turner or Verse. If one of those 2 guys are gone, then they will take whichever one is available at 8. They will not trade back at that point. But if all 3 of them are on the board, expect the Falcons to trade back.
Is there any shot? Because right now, if you take Latu to be the first defensive player off the board, it's pretty nice odds on FanDuel. It's like plus 3,500. Is there any way that Latu, they just take Latu at 8, they don't find the right trade and they go like, you know what, we don't want to risk it? Or do you think that's too far-fetched?
No, I think if they can't get the right trade in the moment, meaning, they don't want to fall too far back, right? And so I think the Vikings at 11 makes sense because the Vikings need to add some pieces. I think, you're looking at if they can't trade, I think between that 10 and 14 spot, pick up additional draft capital, I think they would stay at 8 and pick. I don't think they want to fall outside that top 14.
Okay. And now, Atlanta's new regime obviously didn't draft Drake London, and they went after Mooney. Is Drake London the undisputed one of the team, or is it more of a 1A, 1B situation with Mooney and London?
No, London is the one. The only way that you would see London as the one is if the Falcons surprised everybody and went up there and got like a Neighbors or an Odunze or, a Harrison Jr. Because at that point, you're not drafting those guys that high for them to be a 2, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. And again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, like, London is the one, right? Like, there's no dispute that London is the one. And I think he's got the potential, and I think he's got the talent to be a 1. So yeah, I don't see a scenario in which he's not the one.
Troy Anderson and Nate Landman. Just curious on like who's starting next year, how you thought that they looked last year. What are your thoughts on both of them?
I think everybody needs to be evaluated. Obviously, when you have, you don't have any success, or you don't have the success that you're expecting. Especially at a spot like linebacker where the Falcons were really good for such a long time, right? And you look at Jacksonville yesterday; they gave the extension to the former Falcons. God, all of a sudden his name slips my mind. I had a pen. Anyway, Falcons linebacker here for Atlanta has been really good for a decade.
Foyer?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, letting him go just never made sense to anybody. And he goes to Jacksonville and continues what he started here in Atlanta, right? And so
yeah.
When you look at Troy Anderson, I thought he was, until he got injured last year, what was it, September? I thought he played really well. I think linebacker is a spot where I think the Falcons are pretty happy with everything. Defense I thought was great last year. I don't see any issues. I know that I think we need another safety. Obviously, we need corners. I just don't see a whole lot of moves over there. You look at Nate Landman, Caden Ellis, like those guys will be in the mix. But also, like, let's remember though that they're moving now to a 3-4, and so that's going to change kind of how this team looks and all of those things. I think if Anderson is healthy, I think he will be the starter. I thought he played well until that injury there in late September. I'm shocked that they have not brought back what's his name out of LSU?
Deion Jones?
Bud Dupree.
Oh, Dupree.
Yeah, I'm shocked that they have not re-signed Bud Dupree. I thought he was really good last year for them as well. I know that they've reached out to both Dupree as well as Campbell to bring those guys back, kind of balls in their court to see what they want to do. So I like what they're at linebacker. I think that's probably one of the better positions on this team. But I also think that we'll see some free agent moves here in the next, probably, if not right before the draft, right after the draft, as they put this roster together. I know they have some offers out to the guys that are mulling some things. But you also have a lot of these older veterans like the Calais Campbells, like the Bud Duprees. Those guys are also kind of wait to see how teams are drafting, because some of these older guys don't want to come in and compete, right? Like they don't want to mess with these younger guys and be a role player. They want to be on the field. And so I think you're seeing a lot of these older free agents. There has not been a whole lot of movement across the league after those first 2 or 3 days of free agency. And you have a lot of vets who have a lot of offers on the table, but they're waiting to see where they can step in and be a major role player, not some guy coming off the bench in certain situations. And so after the draft, I think you'll see a lot of teams, including the Falcons, make some roster moves and bring back some guys that will compete and be fine.
Yeah, I'm all for Bud Dupree coming back. What about Richie Grant? What are your thoughts on him? Do you think he's good, bad? Like, seems like he's a little shaky. Had moments.
Yeah, God, he had some big moments. Jesse Bates, they love, which I understand. Richie Grant is a guy that they want to bring competition in for. They are not sold on him. One thing that Raheem and all those guys did as soon as they got here is they literally watched every play from last year. They broke down every piece of film on every single player and decided, that was why Tyler Heineke, everybody here expected him to get cut. I was the one that came out and said, he's not getting cut. They're going to restructure him. And they've done that quietly, by the way. They restructured him very, very quietly over the last 10 days or so. Instead of a $9 million hit, he's now a $4.5 million hit to the cap. Bates, they love. Richie Grant, not so much. They want to bring in guys to compete with Grant. Now, if he ends up winning the job out of the competition, then so be it. But Richie Grant, they really, they're not in love with him. That's a guy that they do want to bring in competition for. I just kind of jokingly did a mock draft yesterday for the first time in my life. I've literally never done a mock draft. And I had them taking 2 safeties. I had them taking, what's his name, out of Miami, and then Javon Bullard out of UGA to compete at those safety spots. I think Bullard probably more along the lines is going to be a nickel in the NFL, not necessarily so much of a safety. But then you bring in what is his name? Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. I think he actually competes with Richie Grant and honestly probably beats out Grant if that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. Final subscriber question, and then I have one question for you before you go. Kirk Cousins, he seems to be very corporate, right? Getting all these contracts, guaranteed deals, lots of money. How motivated or hungry do you think he is for a Super Bowl? Or is he more like a Dak Prescott, where it's like kind of like, Dak reminds me of a not the most like fiery quarterback in the world, wants to go, like has that perception of going after money more than like, wanting to win, which I don't think that's totally fair for me to say that, but that's sort of the perception that he gives off. Do you think Kirk Cousins falls into that category, or do you think that this guy going into his wife's home state, right? Like that's where his wife is from. Do you think that this guy's like, this is my shot, this is probably my last chance to win a Super Bowl?
No, I think, to quote these young kids, right? He secured the bag, right? Like that was secured a long time ago. And so I think he wants to win. I think he looked around and said, who gives me the best opportunity to win right now of the teams that are reaching out? Because the Falcons and the Vikings weren't the only 2 teams that wanted Kirk Cousins. Like we all know that. He looked around and said, which team gives me which opportunity, can I take that gives me the best chance to win? And we've seen fiery outbursts from Kirk Cousins over the years, right? Like we've seen him have those moments. And so I think he's a fiery guy. I think he wants to win. And I think he views Atlanta as a potential opportunity, maybe not right away, but over the course of that contract, I think sometime in the next 4 years, he thinks that this team with the vision that was laid out to him, can be a team to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a good segue to my final question. What's your prediction on the outcome of the Falcons 2024 season?
Best case scenario, I think they go 13-4. Worst case, I think they're 11-6.
Wow. Okay. So really we're making playoffs.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario. Okay.
I think they run away with the division. I don't think I would be shocked if they go 4-2, 5-1 in the division this year. I just don't see how they don't. This division is absolute trash. Baker going back to Tampa doesn't matter to me.
No Canales.
Saints are trash. We all know the Panthers probably the worst team in professional football. Hell, they might be the worst team in college football. So for me, this Falcons team, again, no worse than 4-2, 5-1 in the division. Not that wins you the division, right? Because we've seen teams go undefeated in the division and not make the playoffs, because that's just not how it works in the NFL. But I would be shocked if this team was anything other than 11-6. Their sweet spot probably 12-5, so somewhere in between the two. But I think they have the potential
to win
to
the division.
Yes, 100%.
Where do you project them going? Is it Super Bowl, conference championship? Like, where's their exit?
I think they, if everything stays in, right? Like if they stay healthy and all of those things, like none of that, I think they get to the NFC Championship game.
Wow. Okay. I love it. I mean, look, they haven't been relevant since, it's funny. 2018, I feel like Matt Ryan had a really good year statistically, even probably better than his MVP season in 16.
Yep,
but since then, 2019 and onward, like they have not been relevant since then. I mean, in 18, I don't know how I forgot how close they were to the playoffs, but I know they didn't make it. But like that was the last season where I had hope as a fan.
Oh, agreed. The 2017 they came off losing in the division round to the Eagles, as Matt Ryan threw that jump ball to Julio, and you kind of felt like, okay, this was a down year. Cool, you're gonna rebuild. 2018, everybody's still here, and then that was the first year where I felt like, holy crap, this thing is gonna go down very, very quickly. When 2018 did not go well.
Look, Ra was a part of those teams. Okay, so there are two memories from that era that really is engraved in my mind. Obviously, when James White scores and beats the Falcons in overtime in the Super Bowl, I'll never forget the announcer's call. I think it was either Collinsworth or Buck that made the call when White scores, Patriots win the. It's stuck in my head. I'm scarred. And the second is that freaking ricochet ball that went off Keanu Neal's knee in the Eagles game. And I think it might have been Alshon Jeffrey that caught the ball. It could have easily been a pick six. And all of a sudden you have the Falcons going up against the Vikings in the NFC Championship game where anything could have happened, right? Like those two memories, and obviously the fate, like the jump ball to Julio that didn't come down in that same game. Like I'm just scarred, man.
Yeah, for me at the time, I was still working in radio, and I was here working at CBS Radio for 929, and they are still the flagship for the Falcons. I was the guy who was live and local after the Super Bowl. That was my show.
No,
and that was me. And so I was, and my wife was born and raised in Boston, right? So she's a huge Patriots fan. Big Red Sox fan, big Patriots fan, big Celtics fan, big Bruins. Like New England sports is, again, born and raised up there. I can't fault her for that. Unfortunately for me, my son took all of those teams because his entire life he's watched them win championships. So, when your entire family's, they can't blame him, right?
Yeah.
The one team that we did fall in love together with is the Braves. So we're both Braves fans. That is kind of our team. I'm still a Padres fan because I grew up out there. But my son and I love the Braves. We've spent so many times. We've gone to probably 200 games the last 3 years. So, we're big Braves fans, go Braves. But yeah, so those are his teams. So I had to be in the house that day. First half, I was preparing my radio show. I had former players. I had it all. We were going to throw a big party. And then next thing I know, my wife disappears. She goes upstairs to the room because that's where she watched games when they got bad. And inevitably, every Patriots game where she ended up in the room, they won, right? So you're talking Seahawks, you're talking like it didn't matter. She went up to the room and changed the course. So I still blame that on my wife. But I was the only guy. There's 2 sports stations here in Atlanta. I was the only one live and local after that Super Bowl. I took phone calls for 4.5 hours from grown adults crying, screaming, and yelling. I remember at one time I had to replan the entire show. And at one point I got a text message from my boss, the program director, saying, "Shut the F up and take phone calls," which was very anti him to begin with. They don't take phone calls.
Yeah.
If you are a phone call driven show, you're probably not very successful. And literally his text to me was, "Shut the F up and take phone calls." So I spent 4.5 hours until 3 a.m. that morning taking phone calls from Falcons fans who were screaming, crying, venting. I needed Dr. Phil that night. Okay. I had it was absolutely insane to me. So trust me, that will never, I will be 85 and senile and forget my kids' names, but I will never forget that day. I will never forget that.
Oh man, Jeff, that is freaking awesome, dude. Look, you can handle it 2 ways, right? You can go on radio shows, call, cry your eyes out, or you could have been like me. I was pissed drunk trying to just digest what happened, man. I couldn't believe, I was drinking to celebrate. I'm like, oh my God, they did it. I suffered through the Joey Harrington years. Matt Ryan's finally putting it all together from his first pass being a touchdown, just seeing him fall against the Niners and have those years where he struggled a little bit. I was so happy for him. But I'll tell you one thing, man. The one thing about that team that ticked me off, all right, that I think could have changed the outcome, potentially having this locker room guy. How did we let Roddy White go, man? He was such a great, he was one of my favorite Falcons. If he was just in that locker room, even as not playing as a receiver, just just on the sideline, as a morale guy or something, I feel like that guy would have done something there. And
you know why?
I don't know
why they got rid of him, right?
He was beefing with Shanahan, right?
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan did not want him on the roster anymore. That's why they got rid of him. He probably still had another good 2 or 3 years in him. And Kyle Shanahan did not like him because Roddy White, he wanted the football. He wanted to be a part of the offense.
Yeah.
And you can make the argument, if you go back and look, during his time in the NFL, Roddy White was a top 4 wide receiver.
Oh, yeah. Roddy was incredible. Yeah. He's overshadowed by the fact that Julio Jones is a generate. Look, Roddy White, I'm not going to say generational, but he was so good. And honestly, watching Falcons since the Vic era, he's my favorite guy. Die hard, he's Falcons to the core. He was still good. Like you said, he had 3 years left in him, but he didn't have the heart to go to another team. The Titans gave him an offer and he wouldn't do it. He can't put on another uniform. That's a true Falcon. And you know what, man? A part of me is, I know this sucks to say, but I'm kind of I don't want to say I'm happy we didn't win without him, but I wanted him to win that ring with us. It didn't feel right.
100%. Yeah, he to me, he was the Sterling Sharp of the NFL of his time, right? Sterling Sharp never got any love because he was always overshadowed by Jerry Rice and injuries and everything else. And Roddy White never got the love because he was true to Atlanta, didn't want to put on, to your point, didn't want to wear another uniform. But he was so damn good through the garbage quarterbacks here in Atlanta before they finally got to Matt Ryan. And then those two just absolutely lit it up. And, even after they signed Tony Gonzalez, he didn't mind falling back to being third, right? He didn't mind being that third option. He was a team guy. And for Kyle Shanahan to essentially say it's either me or him, it always rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, that was messed up, man. Because I get Roddy White, he's an alpha guy, he's an alpha, man. He wants the ball, and maybe he wasn't digesting the fact that I'm at this late stage of my career, and maybe I should be the third look or something. I get that too, and him beefing with Kyle, but yeah, make it work, man. Find something out, because he was the ultimate locker room guy. I loved him. But Jeff, you were amazing. I'm so sorry for going over. I know we said 60
Oh, you're
minutes.
good.
Dude, I had so many
good.
fumbles in this. I'm editing a lot of this stuff out, but Jeff had to suffer me just pausing the interview in the middle to go let my wife in the apartment. She locked herself out. And Jeff also suffered my internet just going out randomly, the two things. So he put up through a lot. He stayed extra. Follow him on Twitter, JMB_CU16 for all of the Falcon scoop. And like he has information way earlier than mainstream guys. So if you're like looking for an edge with betting or anything, and the mainstream guys, they're recognizing it too and hitting Jeff up. So definitely follow him. Jeff, good luck to your Tigers. I hope they beat the Tide today. And good luck to your son, man. That's awesome that he's playing college baseball. I hope he gets drafted by the Braves. That would be really cool.
I appreciate that, Andrew. I appreciate you having me on. Anytime you want to talk, let me know. These are always fun to do. And don't worry about today, man. I literally haven't even thought twice about it. Shit happens.